Okay, so I think we're going to get started. And I'd like to welcome you to this evening to the Under Pressure, Women in Leadership During the COVID-19 Era. So I'm Lisa Ryan Burke, and I'm going to be your moderator. I'm the class of 1978, and I'm hoping that this is going to be an inspiring evening, and I actually think you're going to love it. So what we're going to do is we're going to break it down into 3 segments, including introductions. The panelists know some of the questions, but guess what? I've buried some other ones in there that they don't know about. And then we're going to leave plenty of time for questions from the audience. And then those who are participating virtually, you can use the Q&A feature to submit your questions. But first, I'd like to introduce Ms. Lynn Buck, SU's First Lady, who would like to welcome you. Lynn?
Thank you. Thank you, Lisa. Welcome. Welcome to our panelists. Welcome, everyone here and in Zoom land. So I'm delighted to welcome you to this panel, which is supported by the Signe Gates and Don G. Mueller Women's Leadership Initiative. Now in its 7th year, the first Women's Leadership Symposium was made possible from a gift from Janet Fowler Gray, SU class of 1968, along with donations from alumni and friends to support experiential learning opportunities for our women students. This fund is now named for Signe and Dawn, who in 2019 proposed a $1 million challenge to raise $3 million to launch our Susquehanna female students into the world, having gained confidence, created a strong resume, and possessed the necessary leadership skills to succeed beyond their undergraduate years. These 3 women know firsthand what it is like to be the only or one of a very small minority woman at the table. Janet Gray began her career in education and family counseling in 2003, and she moved into a male-dominated industry of metal fabrication, purchasing Genie Products Incorporated and holding the title of CEO. Signe Gates is the chair of Signe Gates is the chair of Susquehanna University's Board of Trustees. I'm sorry, Signe. She's really actually one of the best, if not the best, chair a university could ever have. And I mean that from the bottom of my heart, even though I'm flubbing over the words. She's the first woman to hold this position. Prior to her retirement, she was only the 2nd woman to be general counsel of Barnes Group, a company founded in 1857, just 1 year before the founding of our university. Dawn Mueller was the only female chemistry major in her graduating class in 1968 here at SU. During medical school, after which she would ultimately become a neonatologist, she was one of only 8 women in a class of 125. Dawn is vice chair of Susquehanna's Board of Trustees and the longest serving member, having started on the board in 1989. These 3 Susquehanna women know firsthand what it's like to be among the only women in their respective fields. Their dedication to SU exemplifies our motto: achieve, lead, and serve. Tonight, we will hear from 4 of our SU alumni women leaders, starting with our moderator, Lisa Ryan Burke, Senior Vice President of Heyman Associates Incorporated and Vice Chair of the Susquehanna University Board of Trustees. Lisa?
Thank you. Okay, so I'm going to tell you a little bit about my career, and then I'm going to ask each of the panelists to do the same. And believe me, I'll be brief. I have spent my career in recruiting, and actually, I think it's a great story. And I was telling someone earlier, it's a story that, to be honest with you, I'm really proud of. So when I was a student here, I wanted to be a tour guide. And I went into the admissions office and I said, I want to be a tour guide. And they said, go talk to that man. That man is Bill Heyman. Notice Heyman Associates. So I started in college admissions. I actually followed a very similar career path to Bill. So I started in college admissions with Widener University right outside of Philadelphia. And after that, I went into hospital recruiting for Thomas Jefferson University in Philadelphia. thought I was very cool and a city slicker because I lived in Center City. And then I did a very short stint as a corporate recruiter. And what I realized through that experience was that was not for me. I honestly did not fit in. So I called Bill Heyman, who was working in New York City at the time at the Cantor Concern, also an executive search firm. And I said, Bill, I had kept in touch with him all these years. I said, Bill, you know what I've done with my career. Can I just come up and talk to you? And I took the train up to New York the Friday before Memorial Day. And I said, I need to get out. I can't handle being a corporate recruiter. I was on the road 100% of the time. I never was home. I lived with a suitcase open in my apartment. I had no friends. I had no life. I didn't pay my bills. They turned off my phone. Well, that was when we had phones, but not cell phones, when we had phones. It was a sad story. So Bill said, well, I want you to talk to the president of the Cantor Concern, Bill Cantor. I went in and talked to him, and Bill went into Bill's office and said, let's hire her. So Bill said, you realize we're friends. And he said, that's your problem, not mine. So I started at the Cantor Concern 2 weeks later. Bill Heyman decided he was going to go out on his own 18 months later. And he looked at me and he said, I can't recruit you. You have to make that phone call. So certainly I called him. And quickly after that, I joined Heyman Associates. And I'm proud to say that I joined them 31 years ago. I was the second employee. And today we have offices in New York and in San Francisco. We're a search firm that specializes in communications, corporate marketing, public affairs, investor relations, and public relations. And it's been a wonderful ride. And as I like to say to people, I've seen the best of times and I've seen the worst of times. And certainly 2019, let's just say, was the lowest. And this year it is unbelievable. So I'm proud of my career, and I know each and every one of you are thinking about your careers, and I know all of you will do a great job. So I'm going to have everybody introduce themselves, and we're going to start with Valerie.
Thank you. It's been a while since I've had to talk into a microphone instead of just saying, can you hear me? Am I on mute? So this is great. I love being able to do this live. I don't think my story is as exciting as Lisa's, but my name is Valerie Bestek. I graduated in 2006. It's our 15-year reunion this weekend. So shout out to the class of 2006 if you're watching or going to be on campus this weekend. I majored in public relations and religion with a Spanish minor. I don't know what I thought I was going to do with that, but I had a lot of interests in college. So I just pursued them and had the opportunity to really think about what I liked and what I didn't like. I took an internship right after I graduated at the Kennedy Center in Washington, D.C. I was the president of Sigma Alpha Iota, and we had a great partnership with some of the alumni that helped me get that internship, and it was a great opportunity. I did press there, which was okay, but it wasn't really for me. You realize very quickly when you're in a role like that, what you like and what you don't like. I moved on to a small agency, got a little bit involved in digital media, but it was actually in 2007 when I decided to move back to New Jersey that a Susquehanna graduate, Tracy Moore, if you're watching this, class of 2007, thank you for your help in this recruitment. She told me about search engine optimization. She was at a digital agency at the time and said, hey, I think we really need to get on this. She had done public relations as well. It was booming at the time, which sounds weird that was only 15 years ago, but it was kind of up and coming. I had to Google what it meant. I had never heard of it before. They weren't teaching it here, but I went to join her there, hated it, said I will never do this again. I did search engine optimization and social media, hated both of them. Moved on to another smaller firm where I did more web type stuff, very small, not financially profitable. So landed at Wyndham Hotels and Resorts in 2011. So I've been there 10 years. I started writing copy for the website. So I was writing about the hotels, also got bored of that. I told a few of you there's only so many ways that you can say free breakfast and free Wi-Fi without burning out a little bit. So started looking into some roles in product, very male heavy at the time. Everyone that was doing that was male. They had come from a tech background. I didn't, obviously, public relations and religion, but was encouraged to keep going. So fast forward to now, my team manages, wait for it, search engine optimization, tagging, which is like all pixel management and a little technical, email operations, and the site authoring on the site. So I've had a great path there. It's been fun. It hasn't been a direct path, but I think a lot of you will find that that's true for you as well. So thank you for having me.
Great. Happy.
Hi, everyone. I don't think my story is as I don't know, exciting as yours, but I'll try. Hi, everyone. My name is Ahama, and I am class of 2017. I graduated in December 2016. So currently I work at JPMorgan, but I started off at a nonprofit called DonorsChoose.org because right after school, I really, really wanted to work for a nonprofit. I enjoy giving back, but the culture just didn't click. My manager and I, we didn't get along, and I knew that if I want a successful career, I need to be under someone who can mentor me the right way. So I reached out to Brett Mueller, who's also a graduate from Susquehanna, who was working at JPMorgan at the time, and reached out to him. It took me maybe like 4 days to get an interview, and 2 days later I was hired. It's definitely not that easy, but a lot of networking. And we'll talk more about that as time goes on. But I'm super excited to be back. It's great to be home, so can't wait to chat.
Kaitlyn?
Okay, I am not used to a mic at all, and I don't think I enjoy it, but I'm going to get through it. So my name's Kaitlyn McInnis. McInnis I go by at work. It's my maiden name, but I call it my stage name because my legal name is actually Newman now, but nobody knows me by Newman. And plus McInnis is a cooler name. Don't tell my husband. I graduated in 2007. I was a mass communications major. So I told some of you this story prior, so bear with me for the rest of the group. I actually came in as a journalism major and quickly realized that I was a terrible writer, like just god awful. And so I quickly changed majors to broadcasting. And my professor was like, hey, great face, great personality, but your Long Island accent is terrible. And I also realized that I get the jitters when I public speak. So that wasn't for me either. So I switched over to mass communications because it gave me a sampling of literally everything: public relations, crisis communications, etc. Fast forward to my senior year, I still had no clue what I wanted to do, but I was in a few different clubs, one of them being Sterling. It's no longer here, but it was a great group, and it was a student-run marketing firm. Loved every aspect about it. That compounded with the fact that the very first advertising course was being offered in my last semester of my last year. I also was missing like 2 credits because we transferred from paper to computerized. Don't know how it happened, but that also dates me. So I begged Dr. Hines to get into the class, and I really loved it. And so much so that, you know, I went back to Sterling and the group, and I said, we really have to get into an agency. Like, how do we do this? And lo and behold, one of the people in the group, her father was the head of marketing at Deutsch Advertising in Manhattan. So the professor that ran the group and I rented vans. I drove one and he drove one, and we bussed students into the city to this advertising agency. And it was amazing. The vibe, the people, the energy, the presentations that we witnessed was really great. So that was like, okay, I think this actually could be something I'm excited about. So I came back to campus, I wrote a handwritten note to the director that had met with the group and thanked him. And then time went on, all the finance majors got jobs literally now, and my palms started sweating of like, when can I get a job? I need to have it now. And that just doesn't happen in advertising. You get hired 4 weeks prior. And so I graduate, I'm like, all right, I'm gonna hit the pavement and I'm gonna get a job and I don't have to worry about loans. In 2007, the economy crashed and it just went heads up. 2006 into 2007, it crashed and there was no jobs. highly competitive space. So I cried my eyes out on the stoop of my mom's, house of, I'm going to be a failure. I'm not going to pay my loans, and this is going to be terrible. I just spent so much money on Susquehanna and nothing's going to happen. I'm going to work in the Piggly Wiggly. Anyway, I kept at it. I sent resumes out. I went on a lot of interviews. I kept contact with the person at Deutsch. And he was like, I don't have any jobs. I'm so sorry, blah, blah, blah. Finally, I got my first foot in doing event marketing at Time Inc. because my cousin ran the finance department and begged somebody to bring me in. No health benefits, but I took it. And quickly realized that planning parties on a corporate level was just not my gig. So I kept in contact again with the Deutsch person. Finally, a spot opened, got in, interviewed, and I got the job. And on that interview, I looked up and I was like, oh my God, you have my handwritten note pinned to your board. And he's like, yeah, it really made a difference for me. You were one person that kept in touch, and that pushed you through of actually offering you this job. So personalization is key. So started in advertising on the strategy side. It was great. It was understanding the consumer's mindset, doing competitive work, understanding the whole landscape of TV and digital and out of home and radio and how that all comes together from a reach and frequency to who you're targeting. However, the digital people were so cool. They were my tribe. I was like, all these squares on strategy, it's not me. I want to get into that. So I actually pivoted. And I pivoted around that supervisor level, associate director level, into a fully digital role. And that's what I'm doing now. So I'm the executive director at Hearts and Science. It's a new job. It's a huge $1.4 billion piece of business. I've got 127 people that report into me across 5 different states. So it's a beast. I thank my husband because he's taking a huge hit and kind of a flip of the traditional relationship. I'm the major breadwinner in our relationship, and he is the sole caretaker. So I also knew I never wanted to be a stay-at-home mom. Like, that job is just way too hard. Working mom, I can handle. I'm also an idiot savant, and business is great, but in life, I take a nosedive. So that's my journey. Excited to be here. Sorry for the circular roundabout. And hopefully I'll talk less in the next question.
Okay, so I'm impressed. I don't know about the rest of you, but I'm really impressed. But there's a couple things that I noticed. So the common thread here is keep your connections at Susquehanna, because let me tell you, it pays off. It really does. Every one of us has some kind of connection that got us really where we are today. So congrats to you guys, by the way. So we're about 18 months into dealing with COVID and working from home, and which, it's changed our lives. It's changed jobs. And so I'm really curious. I know how my work has changed, and we had to pivot, which that word kind of, I don't know, but we had to switch very quickly to, we met people. I interview all day long. That's what I do. I'm with clients, I'm with candidates all day long. And all of a sudden, I'm not face-to-face with them. I'm not traveling. They're not coming to meet me in the office. At the time, my husband was like, what do you mean you're not going to travel? You're going to be here every day? I'm like, okay, yes. But we got used to it because he went to work every day. So that was kind of nice. But, we all had to change really, really fast. So I'm just curious, and Valarie, why don't we start with you because you're right here. How did your work change initially? And then I'm really curious, since we are 18 months into it, what's changed again?
Yeah, so it's no secret that hospitality had the worst year on record that we could even begin to talk about for 2020. So I was actually commuting back and forth from Chicago to New Jersey. I went remote in 2018. So I guess I had a leg up when things went remote. So obviously I was grounded. I was in the office the week that we ended up shutting down, which was good. Got one last chance to see people, talk things through and really understand. We had no idea at the time. My lunchbox is still there. We had no idea it was going to be this long. So in January, I had been promoted to vice president and taken on a pretty significant team. Within 2 weeks of the shutdown, I had to lay off half of those people. Some of them were mothers with 5 children, people that were great employees, but we just could not. We knew actually in January that our business would not survive with the model that we had. So the first thing we had to do was figure out how to do more with less. We thought, well, we just won't be doing anything. People aren't traveling. Not the case. There was a lot to do to get our websites ready, to talk about what was happening at the hotels. We have a lot of essential travelers that stay at our hotels. So we still had a significant piece of business that was still on the road and looking to us to talk about it. Now we have to do these things. We had to do them faster and we had to do them with less people. So that was the biggest change for us. For me, the remote thing didn't make too much of a difference. I was already remote. My team didn't like it at first. They were like, we can't wait to go back. Every single one of them now does not want to go back to an office. I have a split model. We'll be keeping a hybrid model moving forward. So most people will return on November 3rd. So that'll be interesting to see how, as a company, we navigate more people being remote, myself included. I think it's great, but we can talk about that later. So now we are still in a position where we still have to move quickly. There's still a lot of changing variables that we have to say, okay, is that business traveler coming back? Should we be focusing on leisure? What's going on here? So we're still in that dynamic. We've gotten better about it and it's less emotional now. It's more, okay, this is what we have to do. This is the pattern. We're not going to get people back. That ship has sailed. We have to deal with this. So I think we've all navigated the feelings around it because it was tough. The worst day of my career, calling, 8 people in a row to say, hi, why I'm calling you at 8 a.m. on a random day. So we've gotten better at really dealing with those emotions and just working through the work of the work. We've all helped each other out a lot. I think that's been the benefit. It doesn't matter if you're the vice president, the senior vice president, you're doing work at this point. And we've all really bonded over that, I guess, in a way that's really nice to see. So hopefully that continues, but hopefully we never have a year like 2020 ever again.
Oh, I'm with you on that one, believe me. So Kaitlyn, I'm just curious about something. So you have a big team. So what challenges has the pandemic created for you as a leader?
That is something I think about on a daily basis as a leader. When you're in person, especially in an advertising industry, there is that energy I was talking about. There's happy hours, there's get-togethers, you work hard, you play hard mentality. That went away when COVID hit. And so what I think about a lot is keeping morale up. You get screen fatigue. There's long hours in the advertising industry and you can get really bogged down. So outside of, making sure the work is getting done, I need to understand and make sure that people are mentally okay. What is the mental health of my employees? Do they need a break? Do they need a moment? And that's okay. We can do that in the environment that we're in now. Do you need to go take a run? Go do that. I'll cover you. But it's also about growth and mentorship. That was really easy to do in person, to have a quick sit down and say, you know what, here's 3 constructive criticisms that I have. Let's work on it. Let's put together a game plan. Let me see your work and do it next to the person. And in a world that is remote, that mentorship and growth sometimes goes by the wayside because it's really just focusing on the work at hand. So it's trying to figure out what are learning moments, what are different programs they can go through to not only hone in their work, but hone in who they are as an employee, to better help manage their stress levels, how to figure out a work-life balance, because working remote is great, but it actually ends up, you end up working exponentially longer hours because you're connected to your screen at all times and there's no break to commute home. So as a leader, I really think about the mental health and stability of my team a whole lot more than probably all the other things of how do we get people motivated, excited, and passionate, especially younger generations, because they're the ones in the weeds and doing a lot of the grunt work that was usually offset by happy hours and gifts and whatever that were coming in from sales reps. So it's figuring out how to motivate and energize a group of people, and also a group of people across the states.
Good. So, Afi, this leads, I think, right into something for you about what do you think the future of work is going to look like? I'm sure everyone here thinks, okay, I'm listening to these guys and they're all working remotely, but what about me? So what do you think is going to happen? What's work going to look like?
I think the future is remote.
Mhm.
Even before COVID, I was already making a list from a manager, like just to convince them to let me work from home. So when COVID happened, I was like, okay. When
You
is the
were
law?
ready.
Law of attraction is real. But no, seriously, I think right now, well, during COVID, I was in a different role. So it was easier to do remote work. Now, being in private bank of JPMorgan is more client facing. So it is required to be in person, at least hybrid, like 3 days a week or 2 days a week. But to answer your question, totally, I think just knowing what I do now and just seeing, like having mentors and then having like mentees that I'm into now, I think it's most of our jobs just going to be remote. And just right now, what you're going through, just finesse it, learn from it, learn how you're communicating with your professors in class right now. When you're networking, like try to, via Zoom, try to see what's working and what's not working. So when you're interviewing or actually working, doing your internships from home, or actually working full time in June, when you start working, you know what to expect, like you're ready. So I think just mentally start preparing yourself for that. Working on your communication skills when you're not face to face, knowing how to read people, because really in person, you can't really read physical signs, but on Zoom, there are ways to like, I don't know, just learn as you go. So, but yes, totally remote.
Good, good. So what do you think during this pandemic? What did you learn about yourself? This was a question, and all of you should think about this. This was a question that I asked my family at Christmas. Everybody was around the table, and I said, I want everyone to answer this, and I'm going to start. So what I learned about myself, because I am someone who I need to be with people. So to put me at home by myself all day long, I worried. I really did. I thought, how am I going to do this? I get my energy from people. But I really realized I can do it and that I could motivate myself. And I got myself into a good routine. But I learned, and it was, again, it was hard, and I'm glad I did it. So I can be alone, and I prefer not to be still, but I can be alone. So that's what I learned. Valerie, what did you learn?
I unfortunately learned that I have no hobbies, not a single one that keeps me active outside of work. And I think as professionals, we all go through this. I think a lot of you are going through it. Some of you told me that since you're back on campus, you've just stacked the deck with classes to stay active. Maybe you weren't here last year and that feels good. That does not feel good to me anymore, to basically sit in front of my computer and say, well, I may as well just work another few hours because I have nothing else to do. And COVID really brought that to light. When I was commuting back and forth, I was on the road 2 weeks of every month. When I was in the office, I had the opposite experience where in the office, I tended to stay until the lights went out at 8 p.m. And then I was like, well, I guess I'll drive home now and treat my apartment like a hotel room. So it was eye-opening to me of how much I had just relied on that to get me through some of these hours and not really think about what I wanted to be doing with my spare time. I just thought, I don't deserve spare time right now. I'm working, I need to keep hustling, and that's the way I'll get ahead. But I started to pursue some writing. Writing is something that I really loved doing in college. I started as journalism too. but also did not think it was for me, but I still enjoy writing. So we don't know that. We don't know that. It never happened. So started to pursue that again and really started thinking about how to spend downtime productively. And I love what Kaitlyn said about the mental health. We created a fake role for me at Wyndham called the PTO chair, paid time off chair, because it just came to light how important that was for people to be able to step away without feeling so much shame around it, or to think, oh, I'm not working as hard as so-and-so because so-and-so sits in the office till 9 p.m. That must be how she gets ahead. I don't want people to ever think that about me as a leader, to think that's how it's done. That's not how it's done all the time. So I can't say I've succeeded in the hobby thing. I tried some crafts that didn't really work. They're still kind of sitting around the house, but that's still an open thing that I like to pursue now that I know it's a challenge.
Okay. Afi, how about you?
I think I would say that life is too short to just go for what you want. And it was during COVID that I switched roles because I realized I wasn't happy. So, and anything could happen at any time. So why am I still here? So I got back to like looking for roles and apply for a new role and have a new role. Most people were afraid, do you move now? Like nobody really know if you'll have a job, but again, back to it, my happiness matters. So life is too short, go for what you want.
That's great. Kaitlyn?
I think there's so much that was learned during that lockdown, that you're with your significant other, a toddler, a dog. We were tucked in the mountains, so like literally nobody was around. But I think prior to COVID, women had to have this perception of, you know, they are just workers, and you couldn't really bring the personal side in. It was kind of poo-pooed and shamed upon if you had to run out because your kid was sick. And I think what COVID taught all of us, myself included, is that seeing the personal side of somebody is so much more powerful and meaningful. So yes, as it's hard to kind of communicate over Zoom, what people could see with me is, sure, like sometimes I could be tense and, you know, or intense is a better word, you know, focused on the work, but I also got interrupted for the most delicious toddler snuggles, and it was okay to talk about Frozen for a minute. And I saw those sides of my clients and my sales reps and my coworkers. And so I think I learned about myself is that I didn't have to put on this front of, I am this businesswoman and I don't have this whole other life behind me. And I realized that whole other life behind me makes me a powerful woman and makes me a better person at work. They make me better. So I think that's probably the key thing I learned about myself.
That's great. That's great. Yeah, I think we learned, I know for all of us in our office, we learned a lot about, more about the people we were interviewing, more about our clients, you know, and you did watch some funny things happen. I had a client who, she has 13-year-old twins, and we were on a call and a Zoom, and all of a sudden I see the son walking behind her. He goes and gets something and then leaves. And I said, oh, your son was just there. She said, yeah, he just came in for something. Then all of a sudden the daughter comes in and she's going like this to her. No. And she said, I'm in a meeting. No. And the daughter comes over and looks right into the camera. And she said, I have to tell you this. This is much more important than whatever you're talking about. So my mother will be ending this right now. And that was the end. It was, and of course it was over something ridiculous, but it was funny and it made us all giggle. So, all right, so let's move away from COVID for a while. I can only talk about COVID for so long, but I'm just curious, where were you in your career when you thought, you know what, I'm pretty good at this? Okay, so who wants, that's one of my thrown in questions, by the way, this was not a prepared one. Who would like to take that one on?
I could do it.
Okay.
It's a good one. It's funny. So I was a few years into my career, still on the strategy side, but I, not even though I knew that the digital side was my tribe, I still was a nerd at what I did. I liked understanding the consumer's mindset and competitive, whatever. And I've always had a knack about doing my job and the job above me. I was in a spot that my boss at that point, my direct manager, wasn't that strong. I was probably only like 24 years old, so still very new in my career. I was working on GSK, so it's a pharma brand. And one of my brands was Beano. Do you guys know it? It's the fart medicine. Told you it was going to be funny. So I put together this stellar competitive analysis. It was like 100 pages long. It dove into what their competitors were doing in the space, the consumer targeting that competitors had. I was really proud of it. And so I presented it to my VP, and the VP was like, "This is great." And typically it was more senior management that went on trips. And so I was like, all right, no, even though I did the work, that's fine. My supervisor is going to go. And I got pulled into the office, and my VP was like, "Kaitlyn, you're great at this. And you crushed the presentation, and you should go down to Texas to the campus and present it yourself." And I'm like, "Alone? Like, are you sure I can do this?" And, my VP was like, "Yes, I'm confident in you." So packed my bags, went down to Texas, was completely baffled about the size of the Starbucks down there. It's like ginormous, the size of a mall. But anyway, I get to the meeting. I'm sitting in a boardroom with all men, not a single woman, and all men in their like mid-40s. And here I am, this 24-year-old squirt, talking about, the gas medicine space. And there's fart jokes flying back and forth. I mean, they're just cracking each other up on fart jokes, and I'm cracking up too. I grew up with 3 older brothers, so get me with a dirty joke every time. So anyway, I go through these 100 pages, and they're asking me questions, and I know it, and I'm nailing it, and I'm confident. And I got home, and similar, I literally would work. I have no hobbies, probably still, but I would work really late and come home and use my apartment as a hotel. But I came home to my apartment, and I was like, damn, I'm good. Like, I just nailed a presentation on my own in a different state, in a boardroom full of men that are twice my age. So that was kind of the moment that I was able to be like, you know what, I got this. I can accomplish anything that I put my mind to.
That's great. Afi, so I'm curious. So you had your courses in your major here, but what courses helped to shape you beyond your major for the superstar professional that you are?
So beyond my major, I would say I took a negotiation class when I was, during my sophomore year. I'm not sure if they still offer it, but it was the best class ever.
They do offer it.
They do?
They do still offer
great.
it.
Definitely take it, because I've used it to negotiate before I graduated. I used it to negotiate right after the class during my internship, and I got a 50-cent bump. So that's when I knew, all right, I got this. This is it. So yes, I was in the negotiation class, and definitely look at or think about, all right, like, maybe you're an accounting major, but you're interested in fashion, right? Or maybe you're an accounting major, you're interested in making videos, because I saw some YouTubers, Susquehanna University students, YouTubers on YouTube. So that was cool. So let's say you're an accounting major, but you enjoy being in the entertainment world, right? So maybe take some classes in the communications department. So things like that definitely do help. So negotiation, though, that's a lifelong skill.
Good. Valerie, so a different question. So beyond working hard, what advice do you have for somebody who wants to advance in their career?
I would say raise your hand. A lot of the opportunities that I've taken on have been because I've said yes to them. A lot of them were not opportunities I necessarily wanted. When I took search engine optimization again at Wyndham, I turned them down 3 times, actually. My CMO came to me, he said, "We would like you to do this." I said, "No." His his vice president came to me and said, you really should consider Barry's offer. You should take this on. I said no again. And then my CMO came back in and said, just try it for a little while. And here we are a few years later. So being open to different experiences, I think a challenge we see now is that for me, for some of the people on my team, they expect that things are going to be very linear of I will do this, I will succeed at it, and then something else will come along. Sometimes the timing isn't right for that. I may not have something else to come along for someone to advance. The way that they do that is to raise their hand for other work and to really explore other areas that are of interest. So for me, that's been the most valuable.
That's great. Okay, so here's another question that they don't know is coming. And you're each going to answer it. Hardest lesson learned. Okay, Valerie can start.
Kaitlyn referenced this before about the mental health of employees. And this, I will never forget this moment because it was just so humbling. We were working on a digital transformation project in around 2017. And it was my project. That was my moment when I knew, yes, I can do this. And unfortunately, we were asking people to work weekends. So we worked 7 days a week. That is a fact that I will never, ever be proud of to say that we did that. But I would get up on the weekends and I would rah the heck out of it and say, isn't this fun? This is so great. And a woman that had just started with us pulled me aside one weekend, and good for her for standing up to me. She said, we don't want to hear you say that. This stinks. No one's having fun doing this. If you're having fun, that's great. We're willing to work for you, but we don't want you to lie about what's fun. And it really taught me a lot about transparency and being honest about how we're feeling and how we're all dealing with that together. So thank you to her for that lesson.
That's great. Kaitlyn, Appy.
Hardest lesson. There's been a lot of lessons. I think I'm a mama bear. I'm a mama bear to my kids. If my husband snaps, I'm like, nay, right? But I'm also a mama bear of the people that I manage fully. I love mentorship and I love seeing people grow. And so when outside forces come in and crush spirits, especially junior people on my team, I turn into a grizzly bear, right? And so a lesson that was a hard lesson learned was I can be a mama bear to my group, but not outwardly in a public space. Take it closed doors, have those tough conversations with your other counterpart leaders, because any type of energy you put in front of a group, especially when you're managing them, is energy they're going to emulate. So if you're angry, they're going to emulate that. If you're worried, if you're stressed, your people that report into you, they look up to you and they are going to start doing the same thing as you, and you're not teaching them the right lesson. So a hard lesson for me was to take things offline, have a conversation with them to say, I'm going to take care of you. I'm going to address this, and then address those issues with other leaders in a closed environment, so that at least one, my team wasn't emulating any emotions I had, but also I wasn't putting that other leader in a jeopardizing spot that other juniors were going to look at them differently from a leadership role.
That's great. Appy, do you have a hardest lesson learned?
I would say, well, it's a few. But one important one that I think will be good for this will be speaking up for yourself. I'm very understanding, like when it comes to conflicts, I want to hear your perspective. It's one thing I learned in negotiation, actually, know what the other person wants, so you know how to like negotiate to get what you want. But there has to be a limit. There has to be a boundary. So during 2020, we had the hashtag Black Lives Matter, and the diversity conversation was a big conversation at work. And I was in a meeting with a senior manager one day, and he made a comment like, we're pretty, we're cordial, we're cool, we joke around sometimes. But then he made a comment that he was like, look, I feel like I like you, you're Black. I'm like, yeah, Like, you know, you're Black, so I know you would understand this. I'm like, all right, cool. Then he was like, you know, he was like, you know, like we're all humans, but it's not like I have two heads. Like, because most of our peers, most of my Black peers at that time within my team were asking for promotion and things like that. But he was like, you just have to work hard. It's not like I have two heads. So I'm just like, well, because I talk with my peers, right? Because my Black peers, of course. But it's like the way he said it to me, it's not like I have two heads. Like, well, I'm Black too. But the way you're saying it to me is like, you shouldn't say it that way, right? So when it comes to sensitive conversations, you have to like put your foot down. I had to, at first, because he's my VP, I was an analyst at the time, I didn't know how to tell him, like, that's not cool. But after I recollected myself, I was like, do you mind if we, you know, if we get on a Zoom call for a minute? And I was like, you know, we have a lot of conversations and we work well together, but just there are certain things that you just cannot say. And I'm even afraid to tell you this, and I don't know how you would take this, but certain conversations, you just cannot say that, because imagine you said that to the wrong person who doesn't know where you're coming from. It would be a whole different conversation. It could easily be an HR conversation. So yeah, just setting your boundaries and not letting people talk to you just however, because you're easy to work with or that can go around with.
That's great. Good. So we're going to do one last question and then guess what? It's your turn. And for those who are on Zoom, if you want to write your questions in chat, then we can answer your questions too. So the last question goes to Kaitlyn. And I know you said that your husband takes on the brunt of the children, but what's it been like to parent during COVID?
So before I get into COVID, I guess it's what was it like prior? Because that will be a better starting point of how it's changed. So when I started, my daughter, who's now 3, or when I started being a mom, that's a weird way of putting it. When I became a mom, who my daughter is now 3, it was pre-COVID, and I was commuting in and out of the city. So I'd see her for half an hour in the morning, and then maybe an hour or 2 at night, and that was it. And sometimes I didn't see her at all before she went to bed. And that's important to state because when COVID hit, it was really hard in a sense of multitasking and juggling a toddler and work. But it actually is the biggest blessing being a working mom. Those little moments that I was missing in my daughter's kind of infant life, I got to see firsthand every day by just taking a break and walking away from my computer and coloring with her. Or when she started singing her ABCs for the first time, I saw it. I would have missed that. And so while it is the biggest juggle and hustle of my life, as well as my husband's life, it really has awarded me moments that are cherishable. And I will not knock COVID in the sense of, yes, it was terrible and it was a disease and awful, but for my personal experience, it was actually amazing. And then I was pregnant during COVID, which was a very interesting experience. My son Briggs is 6 months old. And I realized about myself, like I am the opposite. I can be a complete hermit, and I stayed in the house for weeks, like in the mountains. Snow is up to the door, and I'm like, I don't need to leave here until my next doctor's appointment. I'm okay. And so I realized very quickly that I also am really blessed with an amazing family, an amazing family unit. My kids, they can be annoying, but they're actually not annoying kids at all. Maybe I just like my kids better than other kids. But I think it was a really interesting time during COVID. I think it's an amazing time still. And I'm so excited that the world is going to have to be some sort of hybrid. People aren't going to go back to 100% at work time anymore. People aren't going to accept it. They're going to leave, or somebody is going to open another company that says, you know what, I'm 100% work from home, and everybody leaves. So it's going to be a hybrid space, but I think that also opens up an amazing opportunity for women that are worried about being a professional woman and also juggling a family. I went to one of these leadership summits prior to having kids at my agency, my past agency that you visited. And a question I had was like, did you feel guilty? Like, I am not the mom that shows up with like a Starbucks and I'm polished. I am like #frazzled mom, late. My hair is crazy. The kid's like half dressed, one shoe off. And so, I was really worried about that mom guilt because I knew I wasn't going to give up my career. So I asked that question. And a woman that was older and then more advanced in her career, she said, you know what, it was really hard. There was guilt. There was things that I missed. However, when I went through that experience, now that our children are older, I have those same women that I felt that judgment from coming to me saying, how do I get a career? It's like, well, honey, you should have started 30 years ago, right? And so I think what COVID has done being a working mom is actually balance that guilt a little bit. I can snuggle Briggs, I can feed him, put him down, go back to work. So while it's hard, it's actually been surprisingly really amazing as well.
That's great. Okay, who has questions? Yes, please.
Okay. I wrote it down because I forget. What is one piece of advice that you would ask that you tell your younger self starting their career now?
Okay, for those who are on Zoom, I'm just going to repeat the question. And, oh my God, I just forgot it. What advice do you have to your younger self?
Yeah.
Yes. Who would like to take that one?
Any advice? Our career related.
Yeah. I think that's advice that you ask you like just starting their career now.
All right, I'm not that much older. But knowing what I know now with my 5 humble years, I would say it's so important to be self-aware. And like self-aware as in knowing what you actually want. And then taking a step back and saying, all right, do I have the skills for it? What are my strengths? What are my weaknesses? What can I learn? What can't I learn, but how can I make up for it? And just doing that self-audit. And once you know that, like, you know what doors to knock on and how to present yourself. So really strategize, know yourself, and have a strategy around like your future.
Okay, and I'm going to jump in on that one because I'm at the other end of the spectrum on the jobs. I honestly think that you need to try a little, you need to try things. And biggest lesson is, so what if you fail? You move on. And there will be, I tell people this, there will be a time in everyone's career where it doesn't work. We call it the career mulligan. You get one. That's it. You get one. But you know what? You learn a tremendous amount about yourself in that time. And mine was time on the corporate side. I went in the ladies' room the very first day and cried. And I thought, this is just not me. And I stuck it out for 18 months. I would never do that again. I would just cut my losses and say, guess what, guys, I'm out. And it's okay. No one questions you. They want to hear that you're human, that maybe, or guess what? A new boss could come in. And for whatever reason, it's like oil and water. And it's okay. It's not, that line, it's not you, it's them. Well, guess what? It is them. It isn't you. That's my advice. What other questions do you have? Yes.
So my question for Valerie, you were talking about like the hustle and late nights and working back days and not being home much. And Kate tied in about how mental health is very, very important. So did you ever come to a point, or when was that point when you decided your happiness was more important than the hustle?
That's a great question, but I have to repeat it for the Zoom crowd. So the question is for Valerie, and she wants to know, so the hustle, you've hustled throughout your career. And when did you know enough is enough?
I think COVID brought that to light for me, but I would say I'm still discovering it. We had a really busy beginning of month. We launched our 22nd brand in record timing, and we were on calls for 26 hours, which frankly, I'm just getting too old for that. That used to be exciting to me. That is not exciting anymore, to sit on a call for 26 hours, no snacks, couldn't even prepare properly. But I think I've learned a lot from the women that work for me that are just coming up in the workforce, where we would have very honest conversations where they would say, I'm just going to go read a book during lunch. Is that okay? And I realized when they were asking me if that was okay, of course it's okay. I don't care if you go read a book for an hour. Everyone is a high performer. They were doing their jobs, but I realized that I had a lot to learn from them to really be able to say, other people are able to make this work. I can make it work too, and to really drive that home. Laying off a lot of people was certainly eye-opening to me. As Lisa said, there's going to be a time when I'm on the other end of that phone call. That's unfortunately a reality in some of the corporate roles, and realizing that, and realizing that sometimes there's nothing you can do in the hustle that is going to make a difference in a scenario like that. If a new boss comes in, if something happens with the economy, was just really it was just really enlightening to think about the way that I'd been working and what I could change. And guess what? When I stopped working a million hours, nothing happened except for that I got happier. So it was a good learning experience. And I do appreciate when some of the younger women that worked for me gave me that own advice, that we could really partner on that together. So
Yeah, happiness is really important. And I think when you're happy, you do better work. You know, it's the same with when you like how you look, that you've got the right outfit on, you know what, you've got more confidence that way too. And believe me, I think for all of us, this is the first time we've really had to get dressed. We were talking about, I don't know how you have those shoes on, by the way. Okay, I've had shoes on once in 18 months. I had so many blisters on my feet, I couldn't handle it. So no more shoes. So one last question. Yes.
You said that, especially like now coming forward, virtual stuff is going to be a very big part of the workforce. So how did you guys manage to like keep good connections with like clients and people you're working for while being in virtual spaces?
Okay, so the question is, since we're going to a virtual world or somewhat hybrid virtual world, how do you keep those connections virtually? It's an excellent question.
I'm following up, right? Depending on the nature of the work or the nature of the relationship. If it's just a mentorship relationship, maybe follow up once a month. But if it's work related, you know, how often, what kind of project is it? Do you need to touch base often? So as many as you need to, then I guess, yeah.
Yeah, and you know what, I think a lot of people find that staying in touch virtually is actually easier, because you can shoot off a quick email to someone and maybe they won't answer it right away, but they're going to answer it. And you know what, they're going to take notice that you sent it to them. And, you know, just like the note pinned to the bulletin board, it's going to make a huge difference. So I think we're,
Also, just to
Yes.
add one more thing to that, outside of keeping in touch, it's keeping a mental note of the personal information you know about the person. If you reach out to them and you're like, hey, you know, how's your kid doing? I know they were sick. That means a lot because you
Mhm.
remembered. Or, oh my God, it's your birthday. Happy birthday. Like that's going to break down ice that might have been built up from the last time you've talked to somebody. So having that personal touch and remembering details about the people you're in touch with is so crucial, because it allows you to have that personal connection with somebody, especially, which is so important in a remote world.
yeah, I was going to say, and people want to have that connection with you too. You know, they want the personal piece of it. I have someone, just because he knows I say rabbit, rabbit at the first of every month, on the first every month, he sends me a text, rabbit, rabbit. Just silly, but you know what? He stays in touch with me, and it has been years that we have done this. I know everything about his family. He knows everything about me. And, you know, it's been a relationship that's gone on for decades. And, you know, those are all the things that as I'm on, like I say, on the other side of my career, it's truly what I cherish, are all the relationships that I've built over my career. So on that note, I have one last thing to say. And I do want to thank all of you for coming, and we're around to answer more questions. But for those who know me, know that I love to end with a quote. And I was cleaning something out this weekend, and I found this. And you know the saying now that what's old is new again. Okay, so this is what I found. The 6 most important words in our language are, I admit I made a mistake. The 5 most important words, you did a good job. The 4 most important words, what is your opinion? The 3 most important words, would you please? The 2 most important words, thank you. The single most important word, we. And the least important word, I. Remember that. You'll go far in your career, and I know all of you will, because you're at Susquehanna. So thank you.